The Clean Power Hour is brought to you by CPS America, the maker of North America's #1 three-phase string inverter, with over 6 gigawatts shipped in the U.S. The CPS America product lineup includes three-phase string inverters ranging from 25 to 275 kW. Their flagship inverter, the CPS 250-275, is designed to work with solar plants ranging from 2 megawatts to 2 gigawatts. The 250-275 pairs well with CPS America's exceptional data communication, controls, and energy storage solutions. Go to chintpowersystems.com to find out more.
That being said, to answer your second question is, hey, how do we get the cost down, right? I think there's three aspects to that we need to work on. I'll start with the equipment side because that's near and dear to my heart on the Franklin side. And my expectation is that the capital cost of an ESS system will continue to drop. And it will drop similar to what we saw in PV over the past, we'll call it last 10, 15 years, right? And the reason why I think that is, it's one is economies of scale. And two, and even more importantly, battery technology, storage technology, and power electronics technology are going to get exponentially better, i.e. more efficient. And therefore that efficiency will drive costs down.
Are you speeding the energy transition? Here at the Clean Power Hour, our host Tim Montague bring you the best in solar, batteries, and clean technologies every week. Want to go deeper into decarbonization? We do too. We're here to help you understand and command the commercial, residential, and utility solar, wind, and storage industries. So let's get to it. Together we can speed the energy transition.
Today on the Clean Power Hour, residential storage and whole home backup. I'm Tim Montague, your host. Check out all of our content at cleanpowerhour.com. Give us a rating and a review on Apple or Spotify. That is the best thing you can do to help others find this content. And reach out to me on LinkedIn. I love hearing from my listeners. Today, my guest is Vincent Ambrose. He is the Chief Commercial Officer for Franklin Whole Home. Welcome to the show, Vince.
Thank you very much, Tim. Super excited to be here.
I had a wonderful conversation with you almost a year ago, and then we, for whatever reason, dropped the thread and didn't get this interview done. So here we are, and I'm honestly, tickled to bring Franklin onto my platform. I pay a lot of attention to the residential storage space. It's heady days as net metering goes away. Obviously, there's NEM 3.0 in California. Here in Illinois, we're losing net metering, and then the rising tide, so to speak, of climate change and the importance of resiliency and microgrids. So, Vince, tell our listeners a little bit about yourself and how you came to Franklin.
Sure, be happy to. So I've been, as I refer to it, on the solar coaster for almost 20 years now. Having jumped into renewables back in early 2007. I've had the opportunity, been blessed to be in the industry for that long. I've had experience working as an integrator on the residential side, originally with REC Solar out of San Luis Obispo, like way back in the day before they became Sunrun. I've also had the opportunity to run a distribution business, which was underneath that same umbrella for a number of years, which was called AEE Solar, back in the days. Both of those business entities merged with Sunrun, the financing entity, and became Sunrun, the organization that it is today. Quite the powerhouse. So congrats to those guys. I left there and moved on to a manufacturer, Canadian Solar, of which I ended up being their general manager for North American operations for almost 9 years, and was responsible for their module business, inverter business, our EPC business, and a few other ancillary items, and had a fantastic time there building a team and growing a company and really servicing our customers, right, as the whole industry grew. I won't bore you with the before the renewable space, but I worked for some large companies in Nestle and the Walt Disney Company. So come with some experience, but have really enjoyed my time in the renewable space. Fast forward to my time at Franklin, I've been here about 2.5 years, knowing and having been in the business for a long time. We all saw, I shouldn't say we all saw, but some of us saw that storage was going to be that complementary piece to PV that we needed to continue to grow and add value to the grid and customers across the globe, right? Very early on, we started to see the duck curve occur in California, which is a leader in the marketplace. The only thing that was going to help us there was storage, right? So, moving over to Franklin was really a no-brainer for me because I knew I could add a lot of value to a growing market segment. Plus, PV needs storage to grow. And if we're going to really make market penetration and be a leader in generation, we're going to need that mix of PV and storage together. So that's how I came to Franklin, and it's been a great run.
Very good. And Franklin's a relatively newcomer to the storage industry. They were founded in 2019, if I recall correctly, but you've really made a mark now. And in my research for this interview, I noted that Barry Cinnamon is a big fan, and he's one of my favorite solar professionals and podcasters. Check out Barry's Energy Show on YouTube or podcast platforms. But storage, as you pointed out, is so vital, right? It has a stack of value that is much more three-dimensional than solar alone. But it's been quite a ride for early adopters. There have been significant problems with various and sundry products. And then there's the kind of looming specter of lithium and fire risk, which really scares some people. I'm really happy to see that you're doing LFP, lithium iron phosphate technology, which is much safer than some other lithium chemistries. But paint a picture for us, Vince. What is the state of residential storage in the U.S. today? What is the good, the bad, and when is, I like to say today, very few people have a battery in their garage. In 10 years, everyone's going to have a battery in their garage. Is it going to be 10 years?
Tim, I think that's a great way to frame it up. We are in such the early innings of residential storage that, a lot of people kind of don't see the bigger picture. So the way I like to look at it, and the analogy that I draw is I look at our business in the ESS, right, where you have an energy storage solution, that we're very, very similar to what we saw with the cell phone industry 30 years ago, right? So 30 years ago, before cell phone technology came around, you had essentially a wires-based industry, right, in the form of direct telephone communication into the home, right? That was a necessary service, right? Yeah, you kind of had to have a phone service, right, to operate or be effective, or even to be safe,
For
right,
sure,
in your home. It was a monopolistic industry, right? Pretty much governed by one or two big companies. Remember, we used to refer to it as Ma Bell, like she was like our mother,
Yep.
right? It was highlighted by zero technology, zero innovation, right? And was, quasi-regulated by the government, right? And your prices went up every year. That was the direct cell phone line industry 30 years ago. Cell phone technology came in and flips that entire industry on its head, right? You bring in technology that's better, faster, cheaper, with more innovation, and 30 years later, hardly anybody has a landline, right?
Yep.
And everybody's gone to cell phone. Well, let's take a look at today's environment, right? As homeowners have electricity provided to them from whatever your utility provider is. It's a wires-based network, right? Provides a vital service to the home. Prices go up every single year. It's quasi-regulated. It's monopolistic with no innovation. And the prices go up every year. So we have the exact same industry. Bring in new technology, energy storage system, right? Paired with PV. And now you don't need the grid. You don't need the Ma Bell of electricity anymore. You can produce, store, and manage your own electricity. You can do it with more innovation, easier technology, right, at a lower price. So to your point, in 10 years, very, very few people have batteries in their homes right now. 10 years from now, it's going to be the same cell phone industry, right? Everybody's going to have batteries in their home. And in fact, my kids or grandkids are going to get their first home and decide, do I connect to the grid or do I just put in my own energy storage because it may be cheaper and easier?
Yeah, I love this analogy. The grid is going to change a lot. It hasn't changed a lot in the last 100 years, and it's going to change more than it has in the last 100 years and probably the next 10 years. And that monopoly is going to fall. It's just very clear, right? That the utilities are at loggerheads with the energy transition in so many ways that are counter to what consumers want, right? Consumers want resiliency. They really want to be able to operate off grid when there's a fire, a flood, a storm, whatever, right? And the percentage of consumers that is concerned about that is ticking up and is now quite high. And it's like what we're doing with solar and batteries is actually really good for the grid. And yet grid operators try to push back on these projects and this wave in ways that are harmful economically to business owners and consumers. And that just really gets my goat. I'm sorry. I just cannot stand for that. We need the energy transition. We're going to get the energy transition. It's just a question of how fast and at what cost. And consumers have so much to gain: cleaner air, better health, more independence, right, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The value to consumers and business owners is so huge. So what would you say, I guess, to FERC, if you had their ear about how to make this transition away from that old model to a newer model? Do we throw out the old model entirely, or what is the grid of the future in your mind?
So good question, right? Because we're obviously going to have a private and public partnership as we move through this transition, right? Because the grid has governing bodies over them, right? It's not just the utilities operating in a vacuum by themselves. I think if I was to give guidance to governing bodies like the ISOs and FERC, it would be to pass policy that opens up the market to essentially as much as free market activity as you can. I don't think we need a heavy hand by the government, right? But I think we need guidelines that open up the market to more commercialization, and then let the market move itself. I understand your frustration. I hear it all the time across the country because I travel for a living, right? And there is visceral hate in some parts of the country for the utility companies, right? Because they get terrible service. It's monopolistic. They have no choice, right? And consumers are frustrated, right? So, the change will come because economics will make it happen. No matter how much the incumbents try to retrench, right, and kind of keep that old model in place, they just can't beat the free hand of economics. Better, cheaper and better always wins out. So that transition will happen. But it always, we would love to have the support of the public entities, whether they be somebody like the state, right, PUCs or local PUCs, or even federal, or even at the ISO level, to open up markets with policy that allows freedom of choice.
Yeah, freedom of choice. That's really what consumers want. And, we do have deregulation. So there are places like Illinois where you have more choice of where you buy your energy, but you don't have a choice about how that energy gets around. It's piped around by the IOUs, ComEd, Ameren, or you go to California, a very similar scenario. And so I guess I'm also curious, Vince, what are they so afraid of? It's like, here we are on the cusp of electrification of everything, right? Transportation, HVAC with heat pumps. And we're going to be tripling or quadrupling the amount of electricity that we consume as a society. They're going to be selling plenty of kWh. And yet they claim that we're going to eat into their bottom line in a dangerous way. I just don't resonate with that. what do you say to the utilities about the energy transition?
Yeah. So I would say that the utilities still have an opportunity to play a fantastic role in the energy transition, right? They have an established infrastructure that adds value, right? Um, like any other business owner, I would encourage the utilities to listen to their customers, figure out how they can continue to add value and make profits, right? And adjust their business model accordingly. The old business model will fall. There's no doubt about that. I feel 100% confident. If you and I are sitting here having a podcast in 10 years, it is a completely different business model for the utilities, right? The question is, what does that business model look like and how can they add value? I share your frustration with maybe how some of the utilities have tried to or failed to adjust to the new energy transition. To your point, the electrification of both transportation and the home would be just a boon opportunity if you were a grid operator or even a producer of electrons. I'll give you an example. This is what's always frustrated me. When internet communication became a thing, right? And you could go get, either through your telephone lines or through your cable lines, you could get internet connectivity, right? Because the more internet that you purchased, the more the internet provider made money. Did you ever pay a single dime for your internet modem? No.
Right.
The cable provider's like, here, take this modem. Hey, here's a better modem. More throughput. Here's even a better modem. They would literally subsidize the infrastructure. So take that to the utilities. Why aren't the utilities literally handing out EV chargers, coming to your home and installing them for free?
Yeah, the day will come.
Way too late, Tim. Tim, that should happen 5 years ago, not 5 years from now, right? If I'm a utility and I make money on my KWH, I want you using as much as possible. I'm going to make it as easy as possible for you to get an EV so I can make more money. You never see that, and it just confounds me.
Yeah, and you really want consumers to have 200 amp service, right? So many homes still only have 100 amp service, and that makes it difficult to install heat pumps and EV charger infrastructure that we really need. Now, there are some workarounds, and we should geek out, I guess, on your microgrid in a box and your gateway, which are intelligent devices to facilitate consumers having energy independence. Why don't we just walk through that? What is the Franklin Whole Home, and why are you gaining market share in the residential battery storage space?
Sure. Let's take those in two pieces. So let's talk a little bit about our product. So the founders of our company really hail from uninterrupted power supplies, big scale, think data center, right? Where you can't go down and lose data. And they wanted to bring that 100% uptime, availability and home management, down to the residential level. And that's how Franklin Whole Home was built, right? That's kind of our ethos. It's in our DNA. Our product, everybody likes to refer to it as a battery. Well, it's just the battery is a portion of it, right? It's an important portion of it, right? Because it stores energy. But the brains of the system is really our gateway, or a gate as we refer to it. And that gateway essentially is a microgrid in a box. As you mentioned, we like to refer to as microgrid in a box. It's been intelligently designed to be able to run all of your production, right, into a box that you can manage. So whether your electrons are coming from PV, whether they're coming from the grid, whether they're coming from a generator, a fuel cell, or even an EV at this point, because we now have V to L capabilities, our A-Gate is able to take all of these inputs of electrons and manage them. And at the same time, it actually has load control as well. So we can turn on and off 3 to 4 of your largest loads. So if the grid was to go down, right, you have your battery, you have your microgrid in a box, and you can now manage your inputs and your outputs to be able to, as we say, get into life raft mode, right, and manage your comfort level at the home until the grid comes back up.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, in certain cases, you can build enough PV and enough battery to run your house off grid entirely. So you have no dependence on the grid. And our product is actually off grid out of the box. So an installation very quickly can take you off grid when tied to PV.
Now, does the A gate also function as a span or lumen smart panel?
Not in the full functionality that you get in a span or aluminum panel.
Okay.
However, we have what we call as span light, in the fact that we have what we call smart circuits, that if the grid goes down, you can turn on or off those circuits to save your battery so it lasts longer. So if your refrigerator and your Wi-Fi and your lights are more important than your air conditioning or your pool pump or your water pump, right? You can dial down those critical loads to or those big loads to save your critical loads and lengthen the life of your battery.
So when you say you're a microgrid in a box, if you're installing a Franklin battery and the gateway, how do you tackle this load shedding? How does that work?
Sure. So the way it works is it's all app based on your phone. So when I open up my app, let's just say the grid goes down, and I don't know how long it's going to go down for. Maybe there was a storm in Florida, and it could be 15, 18 hours, right? Either before it comes back up or before my PV starts working again, right? In the morning, whatever the case may be. I can easily go to my app and say, okay, I don't need my pool pump, right? It's not mission critical. My
Right.
Wi-Fi is more important, or my air conditioner is more important, or my AC or my refrigerator is more important. So I can turn off my pool pump, or I can turn off one or two other additional large loads that then allows my battery to run the mission critical loads longer.
The Clean Power Hour is brought to you by CPS America, the maker of North America's #1 three-phase string inverter, with over 6 gigawatts shipped in the U.S. The CPS America product lineup includes three-phase string inverters ranging from 25 to 275 kW. Their flagship inverter, the CPS 250-275, is designed to work with solar plants ranging from 2 megawatts to 2 gigawatts. The 250-275 pairs well with CPS America's exceptional data communication, controls, and energy storage solutions. Go to chintpowersystems.com to find out more. So the number one barrier, I think, for consumers today is the cost of residential solar and storage. The number two barrier is the utility, and it's a significant barrier. And then there's the question of infrastructure, I guess. But tell us more about kind of how Franklin sees this landscape and what needs to change to speed the energy transition, as I like to say.
Sure. Let's tackle that. First one first, is cost, right? I think the problem that we have in the industry as in general, right, is we look at a energy storage solution system like a Franklin, right, as a CapEx, right? Oh my gosh, that's going to cost me this many thousands of dollars. Okay, well, full stop. Like any other investment in capital equipment, it has a payback, right? So it has a function, it's just a backup. It can be used, and we encourage you to use it every single day, and you can use it in many markets to offset the cost of your incumbent electricity, right? And there's many ways to do that. So an energy storage system, I like to refer to PV as a knife, right? PV does one thing: produces electrons and pushes them down a wire. That's all it does. It's very simple. It's like a knife. An energy storage system is like a Swiss Army knife, right? You pull out all these different functionalities to it, right? So an energy storage solution can be home backup. It can be energy arbitrage, right? It can provide grid-related services where you can monetize those, right? And you can offset your more expensive electricity at times when you can charge back up at lower costs. So there are multiple functionalities, and every market's a little different, right? But when you look at the CapEx, you also need to look at the OpEx savings and then compare it all in a return on investment, or as we call it, net present value. What's the net present value of me buying this capital equipment?
Right.
And that's the message we need to get out to consumers more than anything else. That's kind of the B2C play, that, hey, this thing can save you money as well as provide, energy backup or some other services to you. And our installers need to be able to articulate that message, because it's going to be different in California than it's going to be in Texas, than it's going to be in Florida, than it's going to be in Massachusetts.
Yeah, and then there's the whole question of how do you make the battery talk to the grid? Here in PJM or MISO, there's a company called Intelligent Generation that does this for C&I customers. They built a business around developing a software as a service to make batteries talk to the grid. How good is Franklin and others in the residential space in that regard?
I would say that's a grid interactive services is kind of like the early frontier of that, right? It's the utility trying to actually participate and work with the homeowner and their energy storage system. We've seen, I'll call it, intermediary companies that have developed, right? I can throw a few names out there like Virtual Peaker and Energy Sage and Leap and a few others, right? That have created a program for the utility that allows them to just plug into their program, and their program already ties back into the homeowner's battery storage solution. So it's, for lack of a better, middleware, right? These middleware companies, and they add a ton of value. So we've been working with the middleware companies, as well as in some cases directly with the utility, in programming APIs, so data interface, so that the utility can access and or manage these distributed energy resources. Early days on that, but we'll definitely see more and more of that grow as the utilities become a little bit more accommodating and then participating in this grid interactive services.
And this value stack, yes, installers can definitely understand this value stack. Consumers, on the other hand, I think it's a bit of a stretch sometimes. So what do you think about that? How do we make this truly consumable for the everyday, let's say, high school education level consumer who, sure, they can understand resiliency. Okay, if they have power when the grid goes down. But frequency regulation, right, grid services, energy arbitrage, that's going to be way, way over their head. And then I guess a follow-on to that is, how do we transcend this? Okay, it's the technology's available, but is it affordable, to a broad base? Of course, it's affordable to upper middle class Americans. Can the everyday, average Joe afford solar and a battery? Probably not today. What are your thoughts about making the technology more affordable?
Well, I'll start on your first point, which is a key one, right? And that's end customer education. You're right. Trying to explain all of the functionality of that Swiss Army knife, right, that your energy storage system brings to a homeowner, that's really tough, right? And I wish I had the answer for you, because if I did, I would be making gazillions somewhere else. It's a tough nut to crack, right? As a consumer, you're bombarded every single day with all kinds of messaging, and trying to get into that headspace with a message that's not easily digestible is a tough one, right? Hey, Coke Zero, tastes the same, no calories. Okay, that's really easy to understand.
Yeah.
Energy storage system does all these crazy things. That's a harder message and harder sale to get across. I think what we've learned from PV is one of the big motivating factors is, hey, am I going to save or make money with this decision? And I think if we can articulate, hey, this is a money saver or money maker for you, that will increase adoption speed. And getting that message across, I think, is paramount for us and our installer base to try and get that out. But that's going to be a multi-year, if not a decade-long process.
And I think about, third-party ownership or equipment leasing, just like, we do with other expensive pieces of equipment in our lives. Is, when you think about, I guess, the customer base for Franklin today, what percentage are, just pure ownership versus third party?
So you're right. For those that don't have the disposable income to pay cash and take tax credits themselves, financing definitely comes into play, right? We are a finance society here in the United States, probably more than most countries. So we're very comfortable with that. And I think that helps adoption. I would say that the financing or third-party ownership of PV plus storage is at a higher percentage than just PV because the overall capital cost is higher. And we'll expect that to continue, especially with interest rates where they're at this point in time in history. That being said, to answer your second question is, hey, how do we get the cost down, right? I think there's three aspects to that we need to work on. I'll start with the equipment side because that's near and dear to my heart on the Franklin side. And my expectation is that the capital cost of an ESS system will continue to drop, and it will drop similar to what we saw in PV over the past, we'll call it last 10, 15 years, right? And the reason why I think that is, it's one is economies of scale. And two, and even more importantly, battery technology, storage technology, and power electronics technology are going to get exponentially better, i.e. more efficient. And therefore that efficiency will drive costs down. So for example, right now your average LFP battery is running about 180 to 200 watts per kilogram, right? So energy density. When you look at what's on the R&D roadmap, that energy density is, we're seeing batteries now at 500 watts per kilogram, right? That eventually, that technology will get more cost effective and come down into stationary storage. So you get twice the power, same size, right? Mm-hmm. So that cost curve will continue down, which will make it easier for homeowners and it'll open up that homeowner base to be able to pay cash for their system. But again, our CapEx is only a portion of it. We need to get much, much better at permitting process. The permitting process is atrocious in the United States right now, having gone through it myself personally. Local AHJs do not know the technology, so the first thing that comes out of their mouth is no, right? And that adds cost to the system. So we need to figure out a way to get local authorities comfortable with battery storage and expediting the permitting process. I don't have a solution necessarily for that, but I would expect that we would get better at that like we did with PV. And then the third piece is the labor component of it. We need to make it easier and quicker to do these installs so that the labor cost comes down. And so the overall cost of ownership drops and our adoption increases.
I agree wholeheartedly on all of these things. And we have talked on the show about the soft cost of solar. There are things like Solar App, which are trying to make inroads. I think they're struggling a bit. It's quite dreadful, to be blunt, right? That we have, I don't know, these thousands and thousands of AHJs, right? Each with their own slightly different approach. And we could benefit sometimes from being more like Germany, I think, and just say, okay, this is the way it's going to be everywhere, and it's for the greater good, and off we go. That's a bit of a pipe dream, as the United States is today. So, Vince, in our last few minutes together, what else should our listeners know? I guess especially installers and developers of residential storage. What else should they know about Franklin?
Yeah, you had mentioned early on in our podcast here that Franklin kind of took the market by storm, right? We did do a very good job in a very short period of time of acquiring a lot of very happy customers, for lack of a better word. I can tell you, as being part of the founding group here at Franklin, one of our key pillars of our strength was providing good customer service. Having been in the PV space and the power electronics space for many, many years, it's not a matter of if you're going to have problems. It's a matter of when you're going to have problems, right? And how you deal with them. So we built our organization on a technical service and support platform. So we have two sets of customers, right? One of them is homeowners and the other one are installers. Actually, third is our distributors, but we'll call the two main ones our homeowners and our installers. We set up a technical service team, right? So we have boots on the ground all across the country, right? Puerto Rico, Hawaii, Northeast, Southeast, so on and so forth, Texas. So we have real human beings that can show up at job sites when our installers have problems. Secondarily, we have an 800 number that runs 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, right? And our average wait time on the phone call is between 20 seconds and 2 minutes, right? So we pick up the phone and we answer questions quickly, right? We resolve problems. And when we can't get it done over the phone, over a computer, over a chat, we have boots on the ground that show up. And acknowledging that, you're showing up is more than half the battle. And that's garnered us a ton of goodwill with the installer community, which, hey, when you have a product that works, right? And 99% of the time, but at the 1% of the time it doesn't, I get a phone call in like 20 seconds. That goes miles. And I think that is what really endeared ourselves to the installer base, as well as our end customers. Product's great, but it has to come with top quality service. And that's what we pride ourselves on.
Hear ye. I think this is extremely important for manufacturers. If you're listening to this, you're an OEM. This is sage advice. And this is where so many manufacturers and brands in general, consumer brands, fall down. So you can have the best product in the world, but if the service isn't there when it's not working, forget about it. And so I look forward to talking to some installers in the coming months. I already have a customer who's familiar with Franklin, and they like it a lot. The one comment they made was the battery is very heavy, and all the storage products are heavy, but LFP is probably at the heavier end of the lithium battery chemistry spectrum. And I'm like, suck it up, Buttercup, because it's a great product and the LFP chemistry is more affordable and less thermal runaway issues. So I don't see a way around that. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that comment.
Yes. All right. So that's been a consistent feedback from our customer base, and we acknowledge it. So I would say two things. You're spot on. LFP, the safety of LFP way outweighs, no pun intended, the less density of energy and the higher weight of the unit itself. The trade-off is very easy to make. Secondarily, we've tried to address some of the challenges with moving the battery around and installing it. We've developed a special dolly, right, that can be power managed to carry the unit in, lift it up, so that installation is very simple, right? We like to say it's only heavy once, right? You only have to install it once, and once it's there, it shouldn't move for the next 15 years. But there's a benefit to that. And also, I'll also say that our unit is unibody, so it's not this modular thing. When you have modularity, you open the door in many different fronts to either installer error and or other failure points. Our unit is unibody and it is bulletproof, right? So it's one big unit. Once it's installed, you never have to go back to touch it again. In fact, we actually have a video of one of our units that went through Hurricane Ian down in Fort Myers, Florida. And the battery was submerged up 30 inches, and you can see the video. When the water receded, the homeowner flipped the switch back on, and the battery was running. And it ran his air conditioning while he was digging out the rest of his home from the water damage. So there's trade-offs, but we're very happy with the product that we have.
That's a great place to stop. I want to encourage our listeners to check out all of our content at cleanpowerhour.com. Please give us a rating and a review on Apple and Spotify, and reach out to me on LinkedIn or at cleanpowerhour.com. With that, Vince, how can our listeners find you?
You can find us at franklinwh.com. I encourage you to visit our website. We have a lot of good value-added content for both our installers and our consumer customers. And I want to thank you, Tim, and your listeners for taking the time today. We really appreciate it and look forward to talking again in the future.
Thank you, Vince Ambrose, Chief Commercial Officer with Franklin Whole Home. I'm Tim Montague. Let's grow solar and storage. Take care. The Clean Power Hour is brought to you by CPS America, the maker of North America's #1 three-phase string inverter, with over 6 gigawatts shipped in the U.S. The CPS America product lineup includes three-phase string inverters ranging from 25 to 275 kW. Their flagship inverter, the CPS 250-275, is designed to work with solar plants ranging from 2 megawatts to 2 gigawatts. The 250-275 pairs well with CPS America's exceptional data communication, controls, and energy storage solutions. Go to chintpowersystems.com to find out more.